Hello vinyl community. It's been a while, sorry about that. Been away on holiday, it's my excuse, and also haven't really felt like doing a video. I've been busy building a bike shed, so just fancied something different. But I thought I'd come back with a power pop video, because out of all the videos I posted, my top 20 I think it was, power pop albums is by far the most popular, most views, most comments, and I guess people might want to see some more of that. So this isn't a top 20 of anything. This is Shelf Stacker's Sugar Rush, and I should have thought before calling it that because it's hard to say. Basically, this is Power Pop Bliss, a collection of records and CDs. I'm going to share 10 today, which are all worth investigating if you're into this genre. There's a pretty broad spectrum of sounds within power pop, and I struggled to define it in my last power pop video, and other people struggle to define it, and there's quite a bit of disagreement over what constitutes power pop. Some people think that kind of that Paisley Underground sound is power pop, which to me doesn't quite fit in. Other people think punk pop is power pop. Again, that doesn't do it for me. But I suppose the originators were the Beatles, the Who, the Beach Boys, and as one of the people who commented on my last video said, Buddy Holly's probably got to get a mention. Then you got the revivalists in the early 70s, people like the Raspberries and Big Star, Badfinger, Artful Dodger. And then after punk, and with the influence of new wave, you got people like Joe Jackson, Elvis Costello, Niccolo, Squeeze, The Motors. And then along came grunge in the 90s, and all of a sudden you got that alt-rock guitar sound sort of adding itself to the mix, and you got bands like The Poses and Red Cross and Sloan and Superdrag and a bunch of others, and a lot of it just got called alt-rock at the time, but it's so clearly power pop. Even Nirvana owed a debt to bands like Cheap Trick, and for all the sort of noisy, discordant sounds, there's a strong melodic foundation to what they were doing. So there's not been a great seismic shift in music since grunge. So I think a lot of power pop, music in general, arguably, has been treading water a fair bit since then. But you know what? As long as you've got a relatable lyric, an earworm melody, and some euphoric harmonies, you can't go too far wrong. We don't want our music to take on too many influences. You're not going to find power pop songs with a guest rapper or some grime artist on there. Just not going to happen. If it does, it won't be power pop anymore. So it's a fairly conservative genre, but it's broad enough in its influences that it can throw up all sorts of surprises. And of course, you've always got that kind of Brian Wilson type sonic experimentation in some of the best power pop bands, people like Jellyfish and the Wondermints, and that kind of rock sound that the Left Bank produced. So yeah, I don't think I've done anything more to define power pop there. Probably just sort of clouded the waters a bit, but I've also kind of laid out my kind of line in the sand where I think power pop is, where its influences are, and how it's developed over time. So that's the boring rambling bit out of the way, hopefully. Let's get down to 10 more great power pop albums. And I'll start off with one which, to be honest, it should have been in my top 20. I'm pretty, pleased with my top 20. Nothing that anyone has said has persuaded me that I've got it wrong or I absolutely should have included anyone else, apart from one album, which how I overlooked it, I don't know, because I've always loved the album. And that's Contiki by Cotton Mather, which came out in 1997. Definitely should have been in my top 20. I don't have it on vinyl. There's been 2 vinyl reissues in 2016 and 2020, I think, but they were very limited, and they go for over £100 a piece now. I'm not that desperate to get a vinyl copy that I'll pay that sort of money. So this came out on the Rainbow Quartz label, I believe, and that is one label. If you're a power pop fan, if you look out for releases on Rainbow Quartz, you're guaranteed quality. Another label that's worth looking out for is Not Lame. Those 2 labels have put out some fantastic power pop. So like I say, look out for those. So what's this like? I imagine a lot of you know it if you're into your power pop. I'd say it's Beatlesque, psychedelic tinged power pop. It takes its cue from John Lennon more than Paul McCartney, and there's a fair bit of the Byrds in their sound as well. Some superb tracks on here. Camp Hill Rail Operator is a sort of swirling cacophony of sugary psychedelic power pop. Homefront Cameo has a feel of I'm Only Sleeping, the Beatles track from Revolver. Tons of tabla and shimmering guitars on there. And then Spin My Wheels is built around acoustic guitar. There's a mix of T-Rex and solo George Harrison with a bit of John Lennon thrown in. Then the track Vegetable Row is as much Tom Petty, Dylan, the Byrds as it is the Beatles, with a bit of Jayhawks thrown in. The one track I would skip on this is Church of Wilson, which is just a bit of a racket, which again shows that it's a post-grunge power pop album. Couldn't resist making a bit of a din. It's okay, but it's a bit throwaway for me. Then you've got Lily Dreams, which is a soporific psychedelic lullaby. Again, very reminiscent of the sort of T-Rex Lennon hybrid. And She's Only Cool goes back to that kind of Jayhawks, Dylan sound again. So there's a mix of influences on here, but as an album it hangs together so well, and it is an essential power pop album. Contiki, Cotton Mather. Then next up, from 1979, an album that some people might avoid because they grew out of a real bubblegum teeny bop band. And it's Elevator by the Rollers, who, yes, were once the Bay City Rollers. And you know, as bubblegum pop goes, Bay City Rollers were pretty good, but pretty throwaway. With this album, I think they really hit the nail on the head and grow up and show what a great power pop band they are. They formed in 1979, this particular lineup, and they feature the South African Duncan Foray on lead vocals. And he was in a band called Rabbit in South Africa with Trevor Rabin, and their albums are really worth checking out as well. And he brings something new to the band, a much harder edge. This is the sort of new wavy, slightly bubblegummy, hard rock end of power pop. And this is a superb album. The title track sounds like a power pop version of The Sweet. It's got those huge harmonies, big glammy power chords, and lots of buoyant new wave synths. Then you've got a track like Hello and Welcome Home, which has a sort of Paul McCartney feel to it in the verses, and has a sort of classic ELO sound in the chorus. The track I Was 11 has huge harmonies, great guitar work. There's a mix of City Boy and the Raspberries. Turn on the Radio is a mega catchy sort of boogie power pop song. Instant Relay is a disco-fied power pop track reminiscent of Blondie. Tomorrow's Just a Day Away is a McCartney-esque ballad. And then on Washington's Birthday, you've got something that sounds like Queen on their early albums. It's pompous, it's overblown. Again, huge vocal harmonies, grandiose piano, sinuous guitar lines. I would say this is an essential album. So do not sleep on it. If you see it, well worth checking out. Now this one isn't quite as essential as that Rollers album. It's not a classic, but it's worth investigating. And it's a grower. I have been giving this a fair bit of turntable time recently, and I'm really warming to it. And it's the Bottles self-titled album from 1979. And the style of this, I suppose, is like a jittery, new wavy Billy Joel. Plenty of piano on here. Production is low key. There's no huge overdubs or layered harmony vocals, but it's definitely power pop and definitely worth a listen. The singer has a sort of clean, slightly nasal, new wavy voice. Like I say, it's not slathered in vocal harmonies at all, but they make their presence felt at times, especially on the chorus of She's a Mystery, which has a nice circular guitar riff and e-bowed guitar. And that's definitely a highlight. That's the track to check out if you want to know what this is about. Elsewhere, You're a Liar has a bit of a Birds Teenage Fan Club feel to it, with its sort of jangled pop guitar and strong backing vocals. And then it's track, second from last track on the second side, Pulls Me To You, which is a decent piano-led ballad with a strong lead vocal. So I'm not exactly heaping a ton of praise on this, but if you see this, it is going to be cheap, and if you can get it in the sort of the bargain bins, I think you might be surprised at how much quality stuff there is on it. So the Bottles. Now here's an artist who was a new one to me in 2022. I forget how I stumbled upon him, but he's made an immediate impression on me. And that's a guy called Paul Steele, and this is his Moonrock CD. This came out in 2008. Paul Steele's from Brighton on the south coast of England. He pretty much plays all the instruments on here except the orchestration, of which there is plenty. Lots of violin and cello and clarinet and that kind of thing. And this is one of those things, apart from the orchestration, of course, that was pretty much recorded in his bedroom. But the ambition on here and the execution belie the DIY ethos of the thing. He creates some epic, grandiose soundscapes on here. Definitely one of those artists who's enthralled to Brian Wilson. So think Jellyfish, Cherry Twister, Wonder Mints, that kind of thing. Yeah, the ambition's incredible on here. Such a good album. There's big, juicy Beach Boys harmonies throughout. The drumming has that kind of Jellyfish feel, where it's less a sort of traditional rock kit being played. It feels like sort of music you'd get in an orchestra pit. Lots of snare drum accents, that kind of Beach Boys Pet Sounds type drumming. Hard to pick individual tracks on this to recommend. It's the whole album as a journey. It's pop bliss, it really is. Now this is his second album. The first, April and I, is similarly ambitious. You can hear the whole of that on YouTube with an accompanying animated film that tells the story of Paul Steele and his imaginary childhood friend April. And I did pick that album as well. And the CD comes in this slightly unusual packaging, which is done to look like one of those sort of books for toddlers learning to read. And I love that. Of course, it doesn't fit in any CD rack ever made, but great idea. And this is a really good album as well. I say tons of ambition. So check any of those out. You'll love them. He writes for other artists. He's written for Mika, I think. And if you need any more of a recommendation, Sean Lennon was quoted as saying that Paul Steele's best moments sound a bit like Queen meeting the Beach Boys in the bedroom of a 15-year-old boy wearing Batman pyjamas. Yeah, that does pretty much say it all. And a hell of a lot better than I've managed. But Paul Steele, check him out. Huge talent. Right, now back to 1979, which is just one of those landmark years in power pop. So much great stuff came out then. And the debut from the Beat, also known as Paul Collins' Beat, and not to be mixed up with the two-tone ska band, the Beat, from the UK. Paul Collins was in a band called The Nerves, who, if you know them for nothing else, they wrote Hanging on the Telephone, later covered by Blondie. This album was produced by Bruce Botnick, who is best known for engineering most of the Doors albums, and I think he ended up actually producing LA Woman when Paul Rothchild decided he wanted nothing to do with it. But this doesn't sound like Doors. This is skinny tie, new wave power pop, melodic and energetic. Fantastic songwriting throughout. Some of the highlights: Rock and Roll Girl is what the Ramones would sound like, with a bit less posturing and a bit more effort put into the songwriting. Sorry, but the Ramones are one of those bands, I think, you hear one Ramones song, you've heard them all. They've never made a lot of sense to me. I cling on to my Ramones albums hoping they really click at some point, but I think it's a bit of a touch of the Emperor's new clothes there. There's so many bands who've done it so much better. And the Beat are one of them. I Don't Fit In is a angular and punchy track with a shout-along chorus. Different Kind of Girl is like a new wavy Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Walking Out on Love has a punky simplicity to it. And again, USA is another track which is like a melodic commercial Ramones. Let Me Into Your Life is like a power pop Buddy Holly with hand claps and a rockabilly beat. You've got the piano ballad of You and I, which is almost has like a Jagger-esque vocal, like on Lady Jane or something like that. And then Look But Don't Touch, the final track, is like a Hamburg era Beatles. So it covers all the bases. There's not a duff track on here. And this is essential power pop. Great album. Then we wind back a year to 1978 to an album I've not seen mentioned on the VC at all, and perhaps it has, I've just missed those particular videos, but it's the Dodgers and Love on the Rebound. And you can see, or perhaps you can't see, but those guys, they've got that sort of new wave look, but you can tell they're that little bit older than a lot of the new wave bands. So I figured they'd probably been around the block a few times. I looked them up, and a couple of the guys had been in the sort of psych prog band Indian Summer, who put out one really strong album. So that's Bob Jackson on guitar and Paul Hooper on drums. But this is not psych or prog by any stretch of the imagination. Think Paul McCartney, Emmett Rhodes, Pilot, The Raspberries, Badfinger, and that's pretty much what you listen to here. Some great material. Starts off with Love on the Rebound, with John Wilson on vocals. Doesn't sing on all the songs, but when he does, he's got the more sort of raunchy rock voice, I suppose. And that track supposed starts out like Bad Company, which made me think, is this going to be a power pop album or what? But then the backing vocals come in on the chorus, and it turns into an out-and-out power pop tune. Elsewhere, Anytime is like a McCartney tune with an Emmett Rhodes vocal, Badfinger harmonies, and George Harrison on guitar. For Your Love is notable for its sort of lovely phased keyboard guitar outro, which to me brings to mind the Alan Parsons Project, which is as proggy as this gets, but Alan Parsons Project were always the very poppy end of prog anyway. Again, John Wilson provides the lead vocal on Come Out Fighting, which reminds me of Billy Squier at his poppiest, perhaps when he was with Piper. And again, highly recommended. And a couple of tracks, I Call Your Name and Mr. Music, really pile on the McCartney Wings vibes, which is right up my alley. Anything that sounds McCartney-esque does it for me. And then you've got a track, Don't Know What You're Doing, which sounds like Jerry Rafferty fronting a Rubber Soul's era Fab Four with some nice backward guitars. So again, this is one that you may have passed over seeing it in the bargain bins. It can be picked up cheaply and it's well worth checking out. The Dodgers. And back to the CDs. Give you Idle Jets and their Atomic Fireball album from 1999. Again, this was a new one on me this year. I've been digging deep into power pop this year, buying a lot of CDs actually, far more than I usually would, just because these things just do, they were never pressed on vinyl. It's the only way to get them. This lot were from Nashville. They're on the Not Lame label, one of those power pop labels I said at the start you really need to check out if you're into this kind of music. And this is kind of a cross between the Beatles, Crowded House, the Shazam, and Fastball, particularly on the vocals. The album features McCartney-esque bass lines and 12-string guitars. There's a piano and Hammond organ warbling throughout, and drums which are as tight as a gnat's chuff. Really, really good drum on this. I mean, great performances all round. Other highlights, Every Time You're With Me has a dark Cheap Trick vibe. Lady Satellite has strutting guitars and big booming drums. Climbing Up the Hill is a slow, moody ballad, which I could imagine Barry Manilow singing, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. It's a superb song, and you can't knock Barry Manilow. Well, you can, but yeah, I could imagine him doing that song. There's a great Hammond solo in the song as well. It's real sort of light as in the air stuff, so worth checking out. So that's your Idle Jets, Atomic Fireball. Like I say, been digging deep into some obscure power pop this year, and this has been one of the highlights. Now, this is another album by one of those guys who had a pretty notable career in music prior to going power pop. A guy called Jack Green, and his album Humanesque, which came out in 1980. And I love the sleeve artwork on that. Couldn't shout power pop, new wave anymore if it tried. And the photo on the back, same thing. He's a Scottish guy, played rhythm guitar and sang, and he'd formerly been in the Pretty Things during the mid-70s when they'd done this more meat and potatoes bluesy rock thing. He's got a really strong voice. This is out and out new wave power pop with slight AOR leanings, I guess. Brings to mind the Babies, the Cars, Tom Petty, that kind of thing. The track Babe on here has an early Joe Jackson feel, sort of a jittery, choppy riff, hand claps and new wave synths. Can't Stand It is an edgy rocker in the Tom Petty mould again. And there's a track I Call No Answer is notable. Apart from that, it's a pretty good song. It's notable because Richie Blackmore of Deep Purple and Rainbow fame provides a couple of very tasteful guitar solos on here. It's nothing like a Rainbow track. But funnily enough, there is a song on here called About That Girl where the opening riff really reminds me of Since You've Been Gone by Rainbow, which should come out, I think, the year before this album. So perhaps Jack Green had been a bit naughty and stolen the riff, but really good songs. Then you got Life on the Line, which has the obligatory sort of early 80s new wavy reggae flourishes. And final track, This Is Japan, which is one of many new wave power pop tracks of this era that plunders Japan for its inspiration. It kind of features those plinky plonky oriental keyboard motifs. It's a nicely sort of reined in, palm dampened guitar riff, and of course lyrics that reference the rising sun and samurais and all that cliched nonsense. But this is a really strong album, and yeah, you could do a lot worse than check it out. Now here's a band I mentioned in my introduction, and they're a great band. Great band. Came out of that post-grunge thing, Poses, and their album Frosting on the Beta from 1993. And this, I'm glad to say, is an original 1993 pressing. There you go, on Geffen Records. It sounds superb. It's got those noisy alt-rock guitars and loose heavy drums that you'd expect from something influenced by grunge, but it has big choruses and really sweet but dark harmonies that to me sound almost like a power pop Alice in Chains. It's a great combination. So many good tracks on here. Solar Sister, on that I really hear the birds in the vocals and some real crashing Pete Townsend style power chords. Flavour of the Month, another great track. Chorus is almost an alt-rock Beatles, real catchy sort of poppy song. All the distortion and feedback on that song and throughout the album kind of tries to pull the wool over your eyes to make you think this is alt-rock, but it's definitely power pop. Great stuff. Last track on the first side, Burn and Shine. Probably the most restrained track on the first side, and it's a brooding song with those same sort of sweet but dark harmonies, a tribal drum beat, and a guitar solo that owes quite a bit to Neil Young. Elsewhere, When Mute Tongues Can Speak, that has a vocal on it that reminds me of Brian Molko from Placebo, and has those sort of Nirvana quiet loud dynamics. So heavily influenced by grunge, but probably influenced just as much by the Beatles and by Cheap Trick and bands like that. For me, the best track on here is the final track, Coming Right Along, which is beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. When I first got this album, I was getting into it, I'd pretty much skip all the other tracks, keep playing that, because that was the one that just immediately spoke to me. There's no drums on it. There's tons of reverb-drenched guitar. There's bass that kind of reverberates like the howling of a wounded brontosaurus. It's incredible. It's the best vocal on the LP. It's atmospheric. It's haunting. It gives me goosebumps every time. There's a gorgeous guitar solo on it. It almost sounds like it's been played underwater. And again, it reminds me of Alice Chains doing one of their acoustic numbers on their Jar of Flies album. But if you can imagine Alice in Chains as a power pop band who are going for sonic experimentation, then this is it. It's a superb album. Absolutely love it, and very, very happy to have my copy of it. Now here's another artist that I discovered in 2022. Again, sometimes I forget where I find out about these people, but I think it was just going down that kind of rabbit hole of YouTube videos late at night. And there is YouTube footage of 3 songs by this guy doing a live showcase in Islington in 2005. How I wasn't aware of him at the time, I don't know, because this album has just got so much play from me recently. Came out in 2006. It's Rick Oliver and his Continual Battle of Thoughts album. He's from the UK, plays guitar and he sings. And this album is on the Fly label, which I didn't know existed as late as 2006. You know, that's a label that The Move and T-Rex and people like that were on at one time. This I would describe as melancholic power pop, and I love a little bit of downer power pop, where you've got, again, beautiful melodies, great harmonies, but the lyrical content is really, really down. So many good tracks on this. I know I do kind of go on a bit about individual tracks rather than just giving a brief overview of the albums, but sometimes I think it's worth it, and I hope you agree. It'd be interesting down in comments whether you think I waffle on too much or whether you like the sort of slightly more in detail reviews. So on here, I'm a Cannonball. Has that post-grunge power pop feel with loud belligerent guitars, a sneery sort of Elvis Costello type vocal, and the track Stop has a similar sort of vibe to it as well. Say Nothing brings things down to a more intimate level with acoustic guitar and a heartfelt raw vocal. It's a beautiful performance. To me, it's reminiscent of Elliott Smith crossed with Crowded House. The track I'll Be the Death of You is a ballad interwoven with mellotron. It's gorgeously produced. It's an intimate performance that reminds me of Elvis Costello or Enough's Enough at their best. Forever Was Too Long features a euphoric chorus and lap steel guitar, and it's like a more upbeat version of Elvis Costello's It's Been a Good Year for the Roses. Better Off Without You is a fastball Elvis Costello style track, as is Love Is Cruel, although there's a fair bit of the Beatles in there as well. And Could It Be That Bad, for me, is probably the highlight in here. It really marks Rick Oliver out as the British Elliott Smith. He seems to really have the knack of writing songs that are sad but uplifting at the same time. I cannot recommend this album highly enough, and you will not have to break the bank to buy this on CD. Check out those 3 songs on YouTube. It's not brilliantly recorded, the footage on YouTube, but it does give you a fair idea of what you're going to get, and it was seeing that made me buy this album. I'm so glad I have, because it is, to me, it's a genre classic. How this guy didn't make more of an impression, I don't know. So Rick Oliver, really good stuff. So that's it. That's another 10 power pop albums for you to get your teeth into. I've no doubt quite a few of them will be familiar to the connoisseurs out there, but maybe I've shown you something that you're not familiar with. Love to read your comments. I'm planning on doing this again because I've got so much power pop stuff to get through, and I think it deserves to be put out there so people hear about it. Okay, I hope not to take so long getting around to doing the next video, but whenever it turns up, I'll see you then. Bye.